Shalom, shalom. I wanted to pick back up in our study on patron and client. But before we do, I want to read a few things from this book, which is the Greco-Roman world of the New Testament era. If you suddenly found yourself in first century Jerusalem, in the home of a member of the Jewish ruling class, you might be surprised by what you discover. You would soon learn that your host speaks Greek and some Latin as well as Aramaic. He dresses in Hellenistic clothing, possesses Roman citizenships, and claims to worship the God of the Jews. But he does not follow Jewish dietary regulations very closely. In fact, the dinner he serves you seems more like a banquet in Athens or Rome than the meal of a devout Jew. The dinner table groans with various delicacies, some of which do not fit what you know of Jewish dietary regulations. The gleam of silver is everywhere. Fine wine flows freely, and slaves bustle around you, each with his or her unique task. His home is decorated with art from around the Mediterranean, and his library contains the works of a number of pagan authors. When he talks politics, he talks about the influence of the Jewish Sanhedrin, but also about the looming threat of Roman power. He speaks in hushed tones of Jewish desire for independence, as if afraid he might be overheard. What has led to this situation? You ask your host. Why is his life such an amazing patchwork quilt of cultural and political influences? His answer leads you step by step into a world very different from ours, but in its own way, equally complex and bewildering to an outsider. So, what I've been saying, the background of the New Testament is something that we really have to study in order to understand the scriptures. So, here on page 16, it says, in fact, the politics of Rome, like its religion and other institutions, was driven in part by an ancient institution, the patron client relationship. This model, which grew out of Rome's tribal origins, allowed aristocrats of the new republic to exercise power as patrons through their clients. A client who was a Roman with less power and status than his patron was expected to show honor to his patron and to support him in any political action the patron took. The patron, in turn, owed his client legal protection and at times financial assistance. As Rome expanded, it would see the world through the lens of this relationship. Its generals would become the patrons first of their own soldiers, then of those people they conquered, even of entire nations in the case of great generals like Sulla, Pompey, Julius Caesar. This dynamic would weaken the power of the Senate as true power shifted from them to the generals. This power shift would help cause the transition from republic to empire. And again, this is the Greco-Roman world of the New Testament era. So far in our patron-client study, we have looked at patrons, brokers, and clients, grace, and patronage. Today, we are going to look at faith and patronage. Faith and patronage. While not as dominant as charis, which is grace, in discussions of patronage, pistis, usually translated as faith, and its related words also receive specific meanings within the context of the patron-client relationship. To place pistis in a patron is to trust him or her to be able and willing to provide what he or she has promised. It means to entrust one's cause or future to a patron, to give oneself over into his or her care. Pistis also represents the response of loyalty on the part of the client, having received benefits from a patron. The client must demonstrate pistis or loyalty towards the patron. In this context, then, pistis speaks to the firmness, reliability, and faithfulness of both parties in the patron-client relationship or the relationship of friends. The opposite of pistis is apistia. This refers, in one sense, to distrust towards a patron or client. It would entail a negative evaluation of the character and reliability of the other person and could be insulting in the extreme. However, it was also recognized that one had to be prudent concerning the placement of trust, just as a patron would need to weigh carefully whether or not to accept the responsibility of a client's or a friend's trust. The term may also refer, in its second sense, to disloyalty or unfaithfulness, as when clients fail to remain steadfast in their commitment to their patron or prove untrustworthy in their service. Next, we will pick up with patronage and salvation in the New Testament. Shalom, shalom.